In the next moment, Elizabeth snapped her fingers and suddenly, a purple smoke surrounded everyone. They all disappeared into that smoke, and in the next moment, they teleported into the beginner's village. Elizabeth wanted to end the day just like that. Amelia was really impressed after seeing Elizabeth's skills. She found her master cool. It was something Amelia could only create after stepping into the Demon King realm. But Elizabeth absorbed it in an instant with no effort at all. She was truly worthy of being called a monster. Lei Ping was also happy seeing that they returned home easily. He thought that as long as he held on to Elizabeth's thigh tightly, all his troubles would be nothing more than child's play. But Annie was not happy because Lei Ping's house was too far away, so she passed out from the teleportation. Elizabeth asked Lei Ping to send Annie in first so she could rest. Elizabeth still had some things to tell Amelia. Lei Ping said okay to Elizabeth and got Annie into the house. After Lei Ping left, Amelia had a surprised expression. She asked Elizabeth what she wanted to say to her. Excited, she asked Elizabeth not to hesitate to give her orders. She couldn't wait to serve her master. Elizabeth asked Amelia if she had heard about the Demon Realm's Dark Guild. Amelia replied that even if she had not been outside in the past 500 years, she still heard some news of the Demon Realm before she fell asleep. She explained to Elizabeth that it was established by Malfoy, the Prince of Mankind, and asked Elizabeth if she remembered him. Elizabeth, after hearing this name, remembered and claimed that there was such a person. Amelia asked Elizabeth what was wrong. Elizabeth replied that she didn't want anything. She heard that it's the Dark Guild carrying out a great number of murders under the pretext of resurrecting her, and that has displeased her. After hearing this, Amelia got really angry. This simply disrespected her master. She asked what Elizabeth wanted her to do. Elizabeth gave the order to Amelia, saying she should make them disappear completely from this world, but she must not reveal any information about Elizabeth or this place. Amelia obeyed her command, and she would do as Elizabeth said. Elizabeth complimented Amelia, saying since she was so obedient, once things were done, Elizabeth would set her free. She could do whatever she wanted then. Amelia asked Elizabeth to leave everything to her. She was going to uproot the Dark Guild now. She was blushing, thinking that Elizabeth would allow her to be free and do whatever she wanted. Did this mean she could get into Master's bed every night like back when she was a baby? Amelia was really happy as she thought about this, so she opened her wings and flew into the sky. But while she was flying, something suddenly came towards her, and in the next moment, something hit her, causing a huge explosion. Elizabeth watched everything from the ground, shocked by the strong explosion. Amelia was confused, wondering what had just happened and who dared to attack her. She thought that only a being as powerful as a demon sovereign could penetrate her skin, and it must be an extremely dangerous monster that she needed to eliminate, as it posed a potential threat to her master, Elizabeth. The one who attacked Amelia turned out to be none other than the overpowered robot dog, who mistook Amelia for an intruder and classified her as an enemy. It activated its target detection system, and seeing that Amelia was still alive, increased its defense level and began attacking her. Amelia, still confused, suddenly saw missiles coming towards her and used her dragon wings to try to stop them. She arrogantly declared that choosing her as an opponent was a mistake, but her expression changed drastically when she realized there were too many missiles for her to block. She was hit by them, causing a massive explosion that left her burned and barely able to fly. The robot dog didn't stop there. It detected that Amelia was still alive and increased its defense level even further, preparing for its next attack. But just as it was about to launch another assault, it heard a voice calling it a stupid dog. It was Elizabeth's voice, commanding the robot dog to let Amelia go. Trembling with fear upon hearing Elizabeth's voice, the robot dog complied and added Amelia to its whitelist. Amelia, severely injured, realized that this place was incredibly dangerous and that she needed to be more alert in the future. In the house, Lei Ping made orange juice for Annie. He asked if she felt dizzy and suggested she try some orange juice as its taste could clear her mind. Annie, feeling shaky, thanked Lei Ping for his kindness and began drinking the orange juice. After a sip, she sensed something different about it. Each fruit pulp contained powerful magic, bursting open to release a fresh surge of magic, invigorating her nerve cells and sweeping away her fatigue. Annie realized the juice was imbued with advanced divine magic, clearing her mind instantly. Suddenly, she began seeing a ghostly nun, urging her to embrace her true self, though it was just Annie's imagination. Overwhelmed, Annie started crying, tears streaming down her face. Lei Ping, exhausted, flopped onto his sofa, remarking how comfortable it still was. He concluded that going on adventures wasn't his thing. Later, Elizabeth entered the room, asking if Annie remembered everything. Elizabeth explained that Annie's ancestors had sworn loyalty to her, and if Annie's bloodline awakened, so would the power of their oath. Hearing this, Annie realized Elizabeth was the legendary demon queen who had ruled the world 5,000 years ago. She asked if it was true, and Elizabeth confirmed her identity. Confused, Annie recalled ancient records stating Elizabeth died with the legendary hero. Glancing at Le Ping, she questioned if he was the hero. Le Ping chuckled, admitting he felt a bit embarrassed to say so, but he should be the hero. Annie was surprised, realizing the truth might indeed be like this. She learned that her brother and sister, Le Ping and Elizabeth, once fought fiercely for the title of the strongest, but during the battle, they fell in love and abandoned the fight. They chose to live in seclusion for 500 years. Elizabeth mostly agreed with Annie's assessment, but Le Ping scolded Annie for her words, cautioning her not to offend Elizabeth. Annie apologized to Le Ping for her mistake. Elizabeth looked at Annie with disappointment in her eyes, expressing that as a descendant of the demon super warrior bloodline, Annie had actually fallen to such a state, greatly embarrassing the demon clan. Le Ping was genuinely surprised after discovering that Annie hailed from the demon clan. Annie felt deeply saddened by it all, unsure of what to say. Elizabeth proceeded to explain that 600 years ago, a child named Jim had awakened his bloodline. His eyes would glow red when he used magic power, and his combat skills improved significantly. However, as his power grew, so did his violent tendencies. Constant murdering became his only satisfaction, leaving chaos in Elizabeth's northern territories. Over 100 elite men under Elizabeth's command fell victim to him. Eventually, Jim even dared to challenge Elizabeth directly, but she swiftly defeated him and sealed his violent side. Since then, he and his descendants swore loyalty to Elizabeth. Upon hearing this story from Elizabeth, Annie's whole body trembled. She revealed that from her earliest memory, she had been living in the church's orphanage, considering the nuns, brothers, and sisters her family. Elizabeth explained to Annie that when she went berserk, she inadvertently murdered everyone in the orphanage. Unable to accept this reality, Annie imagined that she was waiting for the nuns to return. Elizabeth suspected that Jim, with his power, could have become the overlord of the tripartite, so why did he step back? Annie, however, refused to accept the truth, claiming her siblings were still alive and waiting for her. Le Ping, thoroughly confused, questioned Elizabeth about Annie's siblings, but she brushed it off, using her skill transfer door to reveal the truth about Annie's so-called younger siblings. The dolls Annie believed were her siblings transformed before her eyes into soft dolls. Elizabeth explained that Annie had used her magic to sustain the illusion, keeping herself at the magician level. Le Ping was shocked to learn the truth. Elizabeth further clarified that Annie had awakened her bloodline to protect her loved ones from dark apostles, but in doing so, she had lost control and murdered them. Annie broke down in tears, refusing to accept the truth. As purple energy engulfed her body, indicating she was about to lose control again, Elizabeth swiftly knocked her unconscious. Le Ping caught Annie as she fell, and Elizabeth cautioned him that Annie was only temporarily unconscious. If she lost control again, the entire town could be in danger. Le Ping assured Elizabeth that he understood and pleaded for a chance to help solve the situation. Le Ping had taken Annie back to the church to rest and recover from her recent ordeal. Moments later, the little girl woke up and asked Le Ping if he had brought her back seeking forgiveness for inconveniencing him. Le Ping reassured her, saying it wasn't about forgiveness. Having Elizabeth's portal made it easy. He asked if she was feeling better now. Annie became emotional, tears filling her eyes as she explained that she remembered everything, there was no doubt. The murderer was herself. Le Ping started comforting her, telling her she was wrong because everything she did was to protect her siblings. She wasn't a murderer. However, Annie continued crying, insisting that Le Ping was wrong and that it was all her fault. She blamed herself for running away after losing control. Le Ping explained to her that it was all the Dark Guild's fault. It wasn't her intention to lose control after awakening her bloodline. He told her to stop blaming herself like that because everyone lacked materials. But Annie didn't listen. She still believed she was the one who murdered her siblings, and this fact would never change. After seeing Annie's distress, Le Ping fetched a doll and showed it to her. He pointed out that while she made the dolls with great detail, it was obvious she was scared of the cotton slipping through, so she made a lot of knots. Even though it was secured, it resulted in the doll losing its spirit as a whole. Le Ping asked Annie to let him help her untie the knots and remake it, so he dismantled every part of Annie's doll to recreate them. However, seeing this, Annie started to lose control again, thinking that Lo Ping was also harming his brothers and sisters. After Annie saw Lo Ping, she began recounting Shakespeare's words to her. He once said, "Don't wander under the tree, don't ponder under the rain, and don't cry in the dark." Hearing this, Annie found herself in an unknown place surrounded by water. Moments later, as she regained her senses, she found herself in an unfamiliar place, wondering where she was. Suddenly, a really big hand emerged from the sky, telling Annie to look forward and not to look back. As long as she dared to face it and raise her head up, she would find the current haze to be just a very short rainy season. The sky was too bright, but when Annie looked properly, she saw that it was Lo Ping in the sky, helping Annie to control her power. He asked Annie to look forward, emphasizing that there was still a bright sky which would give her determination. He used his hand to lift Annie from the water, bringing both of them from darkness to light and giving her new hope. Sometime later, Lo Ping created a new doll for Annie and named it as Raphael. Lo Ping hoped it could help her heal, so he gave the doll to Annie. After receiving the doll, Annie became emotional, thinking this feeling was for her brothers and sisters. Suddenly, she started seeing her brothers and sisters playing. They told Annie that they were all free and asked her not to worry about them anymore. They told her she had to live well for them. After saying this, they started disappearing, saying goodbye to Annie. After everything happened, Annie started crying. She promised her brothers and sisters that she would definitely protect the church. Lo Ping placed his hand on little girl Annie, saying, "After a rain, the sky clears up." After everything happened, Lo Ping felt relieved, thinking it was a good thing he had learned about psychotherapy from books he got from the system before. But to be on the safe side, he still had to come back to check regularly. On the other side, in the Demon Realm's Death Swamp, where all the dark powers lived, Emilia went there after Elizabeth ordered her to check out the Dark Guild. When she saw the bleak land, Emilia felt really sad, swearing she'd never forgive those who messed up her master's land. This was where Elizabeth used to rule 500 years ago. Up ahead was a once great castle now in ruins. Emilia jumped from the cliff and headed towards the castle to find out about the Dark Guild. Suddenly, smoke surrounded Emilia, and she heard whispers saying a new victim had arrived, offering rewards to whoever could murder her first. They wanted her soul. As Emilia got closer to the voices, she ran into many scary monsters wanting to eat her and take her soul. But Emilia wasn't scared. She quickly defeated each monster, annoyed by their disrespect for her master's land. Seeing Emilia's strong power, the rest of the monsters got scared and made way for her. Then, a big purple boss monster showed up from a flying book. He asked Emilia who she was and how she dared to come to the Dark Guild alone to cause trouble. This monster was one of the Dark Guild's important demons named Kurthuzit. He threatened Emilia, saying he was one of the important demons, and asked her to come over. At the same time, in the Dark Guild hall room, there were thousands of monster body parts in a purple bubble for making lots of monster clones. 6 other important demons of the guild were talking with a man connected to a large egg. He told them that a powerful one was coming to their door. One of the demons said that Khan and his troops were all wiped out when they attacked the Sword Saint Guild and wondered if they came for revenge. This demon was Samui, an important member of the Dark Guild. Another demon said it wasn't a problem, mentioning that the purple demon Kurthuzid would greet them. She was Ruth Bader, another key member of the Dark Guild. Experiment number 24 asked if he should fight the intruder. William Elizabeth told him to be quiet. The vice president of the Dark Guild, Dago Kulu, told everyone that whoever dared to come, even if it was the Sword Master himself, wouldn't return. The man supporting the large egg was the president of the Dark Guild, Wiz Malfoy. He used to be the Prince of Humanity and swore loyalty to Elizabeth at the start of the story. Although he's still alive, he told everyone that he was initially worried about missing materials but didn't expect them to be delivered to him suddenly. On the other side, Emilia had already defeated the purple demon. The purple demon was really confused, wondering how this was possible. His abyss magic was all useless, and even his magic tools had no effect on the intruder. He realized this wasn't good. Her power seemed endless. He thought it best to use teleportation magic to return to the hall and convey information to the rest. But before he could use his teleportation magic, Emilia used her dragon's claw and crushed him with her hand. Using this skill, she could be in her human form and could use any part of her dragon body at will. Only the purple demon's blood and some body parts remained after Emilia used her dragon hand to crush him. In the next moment, thousands of demons came toward Emilia. They were great apostles. They were a little scared, thinking about how the purple demon was actually defeated by a mere child, but they were happier thinking there would be 2 vacant seats for a pillar demon now. They were thinking that since Amelia and the purple demon had a difficult battle, she should be definitely seriously injured. They asked everyone to take this opportunity. Another great apostle asked all the apostles to overwhelm her with numbers and murder her. But Amelia did not give a thought about them. She just saw them as another pile of trash. She used the Golden Dragon King roar and murdered all the demons in just one attack. Her roar sound was so strong that all of the great apostles' heads started to hurt like crazy and blast. They died, and a blood rain started in that place. While walking in that rain, Amelia claimed she was done. She opened her wings and flew and went to the castle to find out about the Dark Guild. But before she entered the castle, the door demon stopped her, saying if she wished to enter, she must answer his questions. The cost of answering wrong was her life, so he started asking her questions, but before he could complete his words, Amelia kicked the demon door and broke it into multiple pieces. After destroying the demon door, she entered the main hall. The first thing she saw after entering was Malfoy. Beside Malfoy, the remaining members of the 6 pillars were standing. After seeing Malfoy, Amelia called him ugly. After hearing this, Malfoy started laughing, saying 5,000 years had passed, and he had become old. Now he was really happy after meeting Amelia after such a long time. Without warning, Amelia murdered him with 1 slash, and his body exploded instantly. Everyone was really surprised, wondering what had just happened. One of them asked if Amelia thought her attack had worked after murdering Malfoy. Amelia thought she was done and suggested calling it a day and going to see Master Elizabeth. But suddenly, Malfoy's body started regenerating. He did expect that Amelia would become stronger. He was really curious and asked Amelia why she had suddenly awakened from her deep slumber. He asked if she had perhaps found Elizabeth. Amelia was really surprised, thinking about what had just happened. She wondered how he was still alive, but before she could say something, the 6-pillar vice president attacked Amelia with his taboo tentacles. He tied Amelia up with his tentacles so she couldn't move. He told Amelia that as long as he defeated her, the position of the Lord of Demons would be his. He laughed, saying that now Amelia's magic power and the movement of her limbs were sealed inside the Dark Sea. No matter how strong she was, she couldn't escape his grasp. Amelia laughed and asked him who wanted to escape, and what did he mean. Amelia started chewing his tentacles, but he told her it was a pointless struggle. However, Amelia didn't care about him and continued eating. But his tentacles were really large when they all came out of the ground. He told Amelia that she was a stupid girl, asking if she wanted to eat him since his body was too much large for her to snack. But he had underestimated Amelia. Amelia started eating his whole body, and the octopus demon got really scared. He asked Malfoy to save him, but before they could help, Amelia had already finished eating him. Since waking up, she hadn't eaten anything and thought that this would be enough to fill her stomach. Suddenly, one of the 6 pillars told Amelia to surrender, saying she had to join them against her will. She moved closer to Amelia and tried to seduce her with a kiss, thinking it might work if attacking didn't. She claimed Amelia as her prisoner, but the kiss didn't affect Amelia. Amelia used some of her power to send her flying to the other side. She didn't pay much attention to her, still focused on the octopus she had eaten earlier, which was trying to multiply in her stomach. Amelia warned the octopus that she would digest it all at once. The other 6 pillar members were surprised that not only had Amelia murdered the vice president, but she also injured her father. One of them found Amelia interesting and used their Demon King's skill Liberation. However, Amelia easily sent them flying with just 1 punch. Another pillar member teamed up with the first one to attack Amelia, but she murdered both of them with a single strike. After dealing with the remaining 6 pillars, Amelia asked Malfoy if he planned to replace Elizabeth by bringing these weaklings. She told him they weren't even qualified to be her opponents. Malfoy congratulated Amelia on becoming a Demon King and expressed envy at her power, lamenting his short human lifespan. Amelia interrupted him, asking if he intended to take his own life or if he still thought he could defeat her. Malfoy laughed, claiming he, Malfoy, dared to challenge her. Suddenly, the egg behind him began to reveal its contents, resembling Elizabeth. Malfoy declared that with Elizabeth's clone, things would change. Amelia was shocked and angered by what he had done. Malfoy laughed loudly, boasting that with the help of the Elizabeth clone, he would defeat Amelia. 1 month later, we could see the OP robot dog cleaning itself, while Liping worked on his farm, digging a hole and planting fruit seeds. He watered them, and soon after, a tree grew with many types of fruits. Le Ping harvested all the fruits and began traveling back home with his robot dog. However, halfway on the journey, he suddenly stopped on the roof, lost in thought. His robot dog barked, snapping him back to reality, and he followed it home. Once back home, Le Ping started preparing firewood for cooking, but he remained lost in thought, even while cooking. Elizabeth, who was focused on eating, noticed that Le Ping seemed different, but she couldn't figure out what was going on with him. At night, Le Ping couldn't sleep because of his thoughts. Suddenly, he sat up in bed and decided he would ask Elizabeth about the world the next morning. He apologized to Elizabeth for bothering her so early, prepared breakfast, and asked her to enjoy it. Elizabeth, direct as always, asked Le Ping if he had something to say, as she disliked beating around the bush. Le Ping explained that after spending a year together, Elizabeth should know he meant no harm to her. He believed that both the hero and the demon queen could coexist, so he thought it was time for Elizabeth to leave and reclaim control of the world. Elizabeth was confused about what Le Ping meant. Le Ping explained that he had hoped to live peacefully by hiding in the novice village, but he hadn't anticipated the truth behind the system's prediction of the inevitable encounter between the hero and the demon queen. While he stayed put, Elizabeth appeared at his doorstep, damaging the beginner village's barrier and causing 500 years to pass outside, leading to chaos in the outside world. Dark guilds emerged, and what happened to Bose and Annie was just a small part of the chaos. Elizabeth, still puzzled, asked Le Ping why he cared about the chaos, as it didn't affect them. However, according to the system, if Le Ping and Elizabeth became enemies, the world would be peaceful, but if they became friends, chaos would reign. Le Ping explained that during that period, he felt caught up in everything because of the disappearance of the barrier. Without Elizabeth, he would have struggled to carry on like before. Even though he could have just stayed here without knowing what was happening outside, witnessing it changed things. Now he couldn't stay uninvolved. It's not that he wanted to be a hero or save people from suffering, but Elizabeth misunderstood, thinking he couldn't live without her. Le Ping asked Elizabeth to go back and rule the world. Even though he wasn't a great hero, he realized he couldn't keep being selfish. He figured if this place got wiped out by monsters, he could at least go to the city to work after dinner. Elizabeth responded, smiling, saying it was a minor issue for her to solve the world's problems. Le Ping was thrilled and offered to help her pack right away. But Elizabeth wasn't interested in the outside world. However, she had two solutions in mind. Elizabeth misunderstood Le Ping, thinking he wanted to get rid of her. Le Ping asked about the solutions. Elizabeth explained the first was to cast a world-destroying magic spell, which Le Ping disagreed with, knowing it wouldn't work. The second solution was to find someone suitable to rule the world, and Elizabeth would guide them from the shadows. Le Ping didn't understand and asked who this suitable person would be. Elizabeth smiled and said he already knew. It was him. Le Ping was shocked and asked if she really wanted him to rule the world. Le Ping stood in the open, clutching his legendary sword, wondering why everything had suddenly turned out this way. Elizabeth advised him to stay alert and start his swordsmanship training. Le Ping apologized and began swinging his sword in the other direction. Elizabeth smiled, misinterpreting Le Ping's actions once more. She imagined that he wanted to play games with her, the demon queen, but deemed him too young for such antics. It was true that Le Ping had a slight edge over Elizabeth in power, but in terms of psychology and knowledge, she outmatched him. When Le Ping had told Elizabeth to leave earlier that morning, she had felt unhappy, almost allowing it until he confessed his feelings, which she saw through. Despite this, Elizabeth believed that they both knew their power could easily destroy or rule the world with a single thought, rendering it meaningless, so they chose to observe and let things develop, especially since Emilia had already dealt with the Dark Guild. Elizabeth thought Le Ping had been lost in thought lately, hence his sudden outing that morning to discuss ruling the world, which she realized was merely his imagination. Misunderstanding his intentions, she believed he was trying to grab her attention. After a year of bonding, she suspected Le Ping had fallen in love with her. Meanwhile, Le Ping, unaware of Elizabeth's thoughts, continued practicing his swordsmanship. He questioned the simplicity of mastering a sword by swinging it 1,000 times a day. Elizabeth considered Le Ping the epitome of strength, capable of being beaten by others, but controllable only by her due to his wicked interests. Despite her disinterest in love, she entertained the idea of creating the strongest child with Le Ping to surpass the realm's limits. However, she laughed at the thought, knowing she wouldn't agree so easily. Le Ping, observing her behavior, grew confused, wondering if Elizabeth planned to teach him swordsmanship and magic to confront the Dark Guild. When Le Ping swung his sword, a sudden smoke surrounded the legendary sword. In the next moment, the legendary sword transformed into a 12-year-old kid. Both Le Ping and the kid looked at each other in shock. Le Ping screamed, asking why the holy sword turned into a kid. The holy sword, now a kid, got angry at Le Ping, asking who he was calling a kid. He introduced himself as Majestic Holy Sword Spirit Alpha. Elizabeth, seeing Alpha, asked Le Ping what was going on. Alpha seemed annoyed after seeing Elizabeth, rushing toward her as if he wanted to murder her. Before he could attack, Elizabeth kicked him hard, sending him flying. As Alpha fell to the ground, Elizabeth asked him to sit down and talk. Le Ping apologized to Alpha, explaining that he didn't know the holy sword was conscious even after using it for so long. Alpha proudly said that he appears at critical moments when heroes fight demon queens. He grabbed Le Ping angrily upon realizing that Le Ping had been using him to chop firewood all year. Le Ping asked Alpha to calm down, but Alpha didn't listen, expressing disgust at Le Ping for changing the script and befriending the demon queen Elizabeth. He called Le Ping disgusting and undeserving of being a hero. Elizabeth, angry, asked Alpha if he wanted to murder her. Alpha replied no, blaming it on the system settings. Elizabeth asked Alpha to help Le Ping rule the world. Confusing Alpha, Le Ping explained that they needed to save it. Alpha asked Le Ping if he knew where his talents lay, implying that Le Ping only used him to practice sword swings. Le Ping misunderstood, believing he could succeed with Alpha and Elizabeth's help. Alpha was about to reveal his strength as the world's strongest sword master, but Elizabeth silenced him with magic. She then explained something to Alpha, causing him to try to escape. Elizabeth used magic to restrain Alpha and beacon severely. Later, Alpha, heavily injured, agreed to cooperate with Le Ping. Elizabeth suggested they venture outside with only swordsmanship allowed without further delay. The scene shifted to the bustling town square of Titano City, alive with the chatter of townsfolk. A girl announced that the Grey Wolf Guild was looking for recruits, and the salary was favorable. Those considering a job change could look at the flyer. The town's air was rich with the scent of street food, the best choice for a snack when going to watch the guild competition. Titano Town was in Sword Saint Guild's area of influence. Le Ping and Elizabeth also came to this town to watch the guild competition. While walking, Elizabeth told Le Ping that her magic senses were telling her that this town was going to hold a large-scale event. With so many people gathered, they could gather a lot of information. Le Ping understood that the first step to ruling the world was gathering intelligence. However, Holy Sword Alpha didn't look happy. He asked Le Ping if he wanted him to accompany them and waste his time in such a place. Hearing this, Elizabeth turned her head toward Holy Sword Alpha and, in anger, asked him if he wanted her to break him in two. Seeing Elizabeth angry, Holy Sword Alpha got scared and asked Le Ping to call him if he needed him. After saying this, he turned into a sword again. Suddenly, Le Ping noticed a flyer lying on the ground. Looking carefully, Le Ping noticed that it was a guild competition flyer. He asked Elizabeth if she knew about it. Elizabeth explained that it was a competition where the guilds sent their representatives to fight. But suddenly, they heard a really loud sound. This was the announcement sound for participants to enter and place their bets. After hearing the sound, people started heading toward the arena where the guild competition was going to be held. Some people asked everyone to bet on the Sword Saint Guild, as they would definitely win. But some said that the Elves had also sent people this time, and there was also that card guild that became famous recently. Le Ping had grabbed Elizabeth's hand, suggesting they watch the spectacle too. Moments later, upon reaching the arena, Le Ping was amazed by the immense beauty and size of the arena. However, their entry was halted by a yellow monster who informed them that his magic ticket inspector hadn't detected their tickets. Turning to Elizabeth confidently, Le Ping offered to handle the situation. He inquired to the monster about the advertised tickets, which could still be purchased for 10 gold coins. Le Ping took out his pouch of gold coins and asked if he could buy 2. The yellow monster confirmed, but then revealed that he had monopolized the remaining tickets and was now selling them for 200 gold coins. Le Ping was shocked by this blatant profiteering, remarking that there were such thieves in this world too. Elizabeth, clearly displeased, used her mind control magic on the monster, causing it to get hypnotized by her. Its attitude instantly changed, becoming obsequious towards Le Ping. It offered them 2 VIP room tickets, asking Le Ping to accept them, saying it was a great honor to serve both of them. It then happily ushered them to the VIP room. When Le Ping and Elizabeth entered the VIP room, they were struck by its luxuriousness and couldn't believe their eyes. However, they weren't the only ones with VIP access. Several important figures from various guilds were present who were hidden, including spellwriter Tagore Severus, unaffiliated drunk blacksmith Brian from the Dwarf Kingdom, Orange Sword Luna, and her sister Purple Sword Anna from the Sword Saint Guild. Anna spotted Leping and Elizabeth, asked Luna to inquire if they were on the invitation list. After sitting in their seats, Leping told Elizabeth that the first glimpse of the Grand Arena made him a bit nervous, but Elizabeth remained nonchalant and requested snacks from him. Anna advised Luna to keep an eye on them, speculating they might be from a guild whose president had aided them in the past. Finally, the competition began. The host, Gob the Goblin, welcomed everyone and requested a warm reception for the players. He then announced the final round of the guild competition and introduced the 4 finalists: King the Genius Swordsman from the Sword Saint Guild, Gala the Valiant General from the Giant Bear Guild, Travis the Handsome Fellow from the Elf Guild, and Yi Laifu the special guest representing the Card Guild. The crowd roared in anticipation as the host declared the games to begin. Travis from the Elf Guild carefully examined everyone, thinking that the muscular fool from the Giant Bear Guild seemed too simple-minded. He was probably just cannon fodder. As for the Card Guild, recently established, the only reason they qualified to join the competition was because they helped the Sword Saint Guild in murdering the invading 6 Pillar Demons. They were just a second-rate guild affiliated with the Sword Saint Guild, and their president was the only one representing them. Travis saw no threat from them. However, the only one who posed a threat to him in the competition was the Sword Saint Guild's Blue Sword. During the competition, Gala from the Giant Bear Guild started running toward Blue Sword to attack him. But he wasn't the only one attacking. Travis jumped into the air and prepared his arrow to attack, thinking about how barbaric Gala seemed. He shot 3 arrows at once, aiming at everyone, but they managed to avoid his arrows. Gala from the Giant Bear Guild caught Travis' arrow and called him rude, wanting to murder him first. He crushed the arrow and threw it to the ground. Suddenly, the arrow he threw began to grow. In just a few seconds, those arrows transformed into a wooden cage, capturing everyone. Travis, after locking Gala in a cage, said such an uncultured beast like him should be locked up. However, Gala, who was really big, told Travis he couldn't stop him with just his rotten roots. He tried to crush them all with his fierce raw power, thinking he could escape with his fierce ram. But when he attempted to flee, the grassroots came to life and captured him. Confused and unaware of what was happening, Travis started laughing, explaining that these were the grassroots of the gum tree. Upon impact, they shrank, releasing an extremely sticky fluid. Meanwhile, Blue Sword effortlessly sliced through the roots with his sword, emerging from the cage unharmed. His flawless swordsmanship surprised both the masked man and Travis, especially Travis, who grew frustrated, thinking Blue Sword was too fast. The roots couldn't even touch him. As Blue Sword emerged from the cage, he apologized to Travis for destroying his plant. To Travis's surprise, he declared it didn't matter and that he could repay the debt with his life. Defeating a formidable opponent like Blue Sword would be exhilarating. Travis readied his bow, unleashing his violent butterfly dance technique, a flurry of 100 arrows. Unbothered Blue Sword muttered, "No fear, no doubt, no surprises, no confusion," entering his selfless state. He readied his sword and executed the bluebird technique, slicing through not only Travis's butterfly dance, but also severing his right hand, without Travis even noticing. Confused and bewildered, Travis looked at Blue Sword, who calmly stated, "You've lost." Travis conceded, acknowledging Blue Sword's title as the Sword Saint Guild's genius. However, he reminded him that he too was a genius, an elf genius. Suddenly, green butterflies surrounded Blue Sword before he could react. Travis unleashed his butterfly explosion, causing a huge explosion. Blue Sword lost his sword, but he survived the attack. After Travis saw that the Blue Sword was still alive, he reached into his mouth and pulled something out, tossing it onto the ground. Suddenly, a huge flower sprouted from the earth. This flower had the ability to heal, capable of mending any wound. Travis used it to fix his lost arm. Seeing this, he admitted that the Sword Saint Guild was indeed powerful, but criticized its predictable attack patterns as a flaw. Despite the strength of the sacred tree's blessing making elves the most powerful beings, Travis was interrupted by Gala from the Giant Bear Guild, who attacked him from behind and murdered him. Gala laughed, stating that Travis, as he predicted, was the first to perish. Gala expressed annoyance at show-offs like Travis before turning his attention to the Blue Sword. Blue Sword was surprised by Gala's presence and the aura he emitted. However, before he could react, the audience cheered for Gala, urging him to defeat the Blue Sword. Gala's revenge fueled the crowd's excitement. Travis of the Elf Guild became the first to exit the competition, leaving everyone curious about Gala. Now the focus shifted to whether the injured Blue Sword could withstand Gala's attack. Blue Sword raised his right hand and summoned his sword, narrowly avoiding significant damage as Gala attempted to break free using sweat as lubrication. Blue Sword retaliated in time, minimizing the impact. As Gala's body grew and purple smoke enveloped him, he declared that power was everything and threatened to crush Blue Sword in seconds. He leaped into the air, launching an attack with 70% of his muscle power. Blue Sword evaded the strike and countered with a swift, cold slash, pushing Gala back. Unfortunately, he couldn't deal any damage to Gala's body. Gala started laughing after seeing that Blue Sword could only scratch him. On the other side, Blue Sword got really surprised after seeing his sword get damaged. However, before Blue Sword could think anything, Gala attacked him and used 80% of his muscle power. Unfortunately, Blue Sword barely stopped his attack using his sword, but he couldn't completely stop it and rolled into the ground. After finding out that he couldn't use his sword anymore, he threw his sword into the ground and started fighting Gala hand to hand. Gala started attacking Blue Sword again, but this time he used 90% of his muscle power, thinking he would murder Blue Sword. However, Blue Sword dodged every attack. Meanwhile, Le Ping was really excited after seeing their fights. He asked Elizabeth who she thought would win in the end. Elizabeth didn't say anything. Anna, the red-haired girl, was really surprised because Blue Sword's sword was a B-ranked weapon forged by the dwarves, but it was broken by a simple punch. Luna, the yellow-haired girl, asked her sister if they should stop it because their Sword Saint Guild couldn't lose more face. But the red-haired girl was really confused, thinking, when did the giant bear guild's people become so strong? Then she suddenly remembered, thinking, could it be the Dark Guild? On the other side, a yellow-haired man named Ash asked one of the important elders, Bali from the Sword Saint Guild, if he needed him to stop the fight between the Blue Sword and Gala. However, Sword Elder Bali from the Sword Saint Guild disagreed. He explained that the remaining two competitors were more than enough to handle Gala. He then asked Elder Bose what he thought. Elder Bose replied that he didn't know and would think about it if the situation got out of hand. He was the Card Guild president and a former member of the Sword Saint Guild, and also a 4-star demon sect realm. His name was Bose, the old man we saw at the beginning of this manhwa. He received card skills from Le Ping to become powerful and created his own guild. Ash thought that Senior Bose was indeed someone who deeply hated the Dark Guild. Just hearing about becoming an apostle made him so angry that he could hardly hold back and even trembled all over. However, Ash misunderstood everything. Bose didn't tremble in anger because Gala became the apostle of the Dark Guild, but he trembled in fear after seeing Li Ping and Elizabeth. He couldn't believe his eyes, thinking how could it be possible. He assumed that Li Ping and Elizabeth were discussing about eliminating them if they won't meet their expectations. Bose's imagination ran wild and assumed further that Li Ping was there to check whether he had used his card and barley tea on the right path. Fortunately, after he mastered the basic abilities, he actively hunted down the evil apostles and devoted himself to maintaining the peace of the continent. However, he worries that the two would not be satisfied enough with his achievements. However, Gala, after becoming an apostle of the Dark Guild, got really powerful, saying the Blue Sword was a little bug in front of him and he would slap him to death. Blue Sword was really surprised after seeing Gala's power, and he didn't have any other choice. He had to use his secret technique, but he was really nervous because he didn't know if he could control it now. However, he couldn't doubt himself. He remembered his master's teachings. If you wanted to enter a state of selflessness, you must abandon distracting thoughts. Before Blue Sword could execute his technique, Gala used his overwhelming strength to attack the ground, making it as flexible as rubber. He used this to surprise and attack Blue Sword, who was shocked to see this. Before Blue Sword could react, Gala began his assault, sending Blue Sword into the air. Gala planned to capture him using his ground-controlling technique, creating walls around him. Confused and unable to react, Blue Sword found himself trapped in a stone cage. Gala, after capturing Blue Sword, explained that the Giant Bear Guild wasn't just about physical enhancement, but also excelled in earth magic, similar to high-level magician guilds. He laughed at Blue Sword's situation. Suddenly, Gala noticed a blue energy coming from the stone cage. Upon closer inspection, he realized his hand was cut off. Confused and scared, he wondered what happened. Blue Sword used his magic sword energy to break the stone cage, showing his power. Despite still recalling his teacher's words about staying calm, Blue Sword showed exceptional skill. Enraged, Gala disregarded Blue Sword's teachings and wanted to murder him, declaring he'd do it today. Despite the threat, Blue Sword remained determined. He cut Gala's right leg with his magic sword energy, causing Gala to cry out in pain. After the decisive move, Blue Sword offered Gala a chance to surrender, but Gala refused, vowing to murder Blue Sword. Gala remembered his master's advice about using enhancements for competition and avoiding forbidden drugs, but considering them due to his opponent's powerful skills. Blue Sword warned Gala to give up the Dark Guild's power voluntarily, but Gala refused and chose to use forbidden drugs to transform into a demon king and murder Blue Sword and the Sword Saint Guild members. While still considering this, Blue Sword swiftly cut off Gala's head. Meanwhile, the masked girl, trapped in the cage, wondered if she could win the fight or should surrender. She lacked confidence in herself. It was revealed she was the Miss Elf shown earlier in the Manhwa when Li Ping's robot dog saved them from the Dark Guild. In a flashback, Yi Lifu from the Card Guild was meditating and training with a card given by Li Ping. While sipping barley tea, she broke through from a 5-star demon spirit to a 1-star great demon spirit. After the breakthrough, she felt drained mentally but found solace in the calming effects of her magic barley tea, preventing her from getting lost in her thoughts during meditation. She was amazed by how quickly she advanced despite her modest abilities. While still pondering this, she heard the door open, and her father Bose returned from work. Yi Lifu was delighted to see him, but she couldn't help being curious about the meeting between the Sword Saint Guild and her dad. She asked him about it, and Bose explained that while the crisis with the Dark Guild's invasion was resolved, the internal problems of the Sword Saint Guild were more severe than expected. He hadn't met the Sword Master personally this time. Upon hearing this, Yi Lifu asked what they should do next without the Sword Saint Guild's recognition, as it was crucial for their region's development and recruiting members for Li Ping's Card Guild. Bose reassured her, mentioning that even though he didn't meet the Sword Master, he aided in repelling the Dark Guild and obtained something unexpected. He revealed a bag containing dark gears of great apostles, which surprised Yi. Recognizing them, Yi Lifu explained that now being at the great demon spirit level, she could purify them in a day. However, she was puzzled and asked if these were the unexpected gains. Bose then showed her an invitation card, explaining that it was the real unexpected gain. The Sword Saint Guild gave them direct qualification for the guild competition finals. Yi Lifu was astonished by the guild competition card. Bose reassured her, saying that as long as she participated in one, their card guild would be recognized. Despite this, Yi Lifu felt nervous, expressing her worries about competing with past participants who were geniuses from various guilds, often at the demon ancestor level. She feared not only representing them poorly but also embarrassing them. It felt like they were being deliberately challenged. However, Bose didn't share her concerns, emphasizing that confidence and determination mattered most. He reminded her that they were different now and that when the time came, he would provide her with Li Ping's treasure deck, bridging any level gap. In the past, Yi Lifu was still thinking about her father's words. She remembered how her father had instructed her to bring in Li Ping's cards. However, due to her limited strength, she could only use up to 6 cards at once. This meant she had to rely on replica cards for the rest of the battle, which would significantly weaken her attacks. Despite this, she couldn't afford to retreat if she wanted to honor Mr. Li Ping properly. She understood that determination was key. With determination in mind, Yi Lifu retrieved Li Ping's cards from his pocket. Using a card slash, she managed to free herself from the cage. Slowly, she approached Blue Sword. To her surprise, Gala, whom she thought was defeated, was still alive. Blue Sword was impressed by Yi Lifu's strength and commended her strategy of concealing her power until the end. However, he didn't see Yi Lifu as a worthy opponent and offered her a chance to admit defeat. He warned her that his guild owed her a favor and he didn't want to harm her, but this was his final warning. Before Blue Sword could finish his warning, Lifu attacked him with her card skills. The Dark Guild president was taken aback by Yi Lifu's unfamiliar weapon and questioned its nature. Yi Lifu wasted no time in slashing Blue Swords with cards and using the poker flying sword technique to attack. Blue Sword quickly realized Yi Lifu's strategy, understanding that her flashy attack was just a distraction. He anticipated another move from her and swiftly moved to counterattack. Yi Lifu was shocked to realize that Blue Sword had already seen through her plan. Fortunately, she managed to dodge Blue Sword's attack just in time. Without wasting a moment, she used her card slash to strike Blue Sword multiple times. However, Yi Lifu's attacks didn't affect Blue Sword. He leaped into the air and tried to attack Elf, but Yi Leifu dodged his attack and fought back with her card slash skill. Blue Sword attempted to dodge Elf's attack using his sword Chi, but Elf used her card lock to stop him. The audience was thrilled by the intense fight between Blue Sword and Elf. They found the card guild's fighting style to be quite unique. Blue Sword found himself surrounded by cards, and the audience wondered how he would deal with this situation. Yi Leifu had already restricted Blue Sword's skills with her card lock skill. Blue Sword asked Elf if she was using his sword Chi against him, but he didn't seem to care, saying it was pointless unless she was ready to face the consequences. Elf, hearing this, knew that her card lock wouldn't hold him for long, but it would buy her enough time to complete her card slash and activate her most powerful move with Spade's cards. She released her cards, preparing for a powerful attack. The cards then transformed into a Spade's dragon. The spectators were shocked by this sight and questioned what it was. They marveled at Yi Leifu's diverse attacks, from locking to summoning. Someone remarked that this moment was worth recording and investigating. Even the proud dwarven craftsman was surprised by the power of the cards, pondering who had crafted them with such mastery. Lo Ping was really surprised when he saw that people in this world also knew how to play cards. He asked Elizabeth to look, and it turned out that people outside also knew how to play cards and could use them to fight. Meanwhile, Yi Leifu used her Spade's dragon skill and attacked Blue Sword. After seeing this powerful move, Blue Sword used his maximum output of sword energy to create a big blue bird and use it to counterattack Yi Leifu's Spade's dragon. Blue Sword's attack with the blue bird was powerful, destroying Yi Leifu's Spade's dragon without any problem and causing some harm to Yi. Luckily, Yi Leifu created a shield with her cards just in time and barely defended herself. She thought Blue Sword was really strong, and as a 3-star demon spirit, it was still difficult for her to make up for the gap in level using only replica cards to win. She must use treasure cards. But she was nervous about using them because if she couldn't control the power well, she might end up harming him. Blue Sword was really impressed with her because she was forcing him to use his full power. He jumped into the air to attack Yi. However, Yi Leifu created a shield with her cards to defend herself. Unfortunately, it was not enough to stop Blue Sword's attack, and he sent Yi Leifu flying across to another corner. Blue Sword approached Yi, saying it was over and she lost. Yi Leifu admitted defeat, thinking that there was no need to continue. Suddenly, something hit Blue Sword on the head from behind. Blue Sword, looking in pain, didn't know what just happened and wondered what hit him. His eyes started changing. Yi Leifu also got shocked after seeing this. The one who attacked Blue Sword was Gola's head. He was controlling Blue Sword's body. However, he was not Gola. He was a great apostle who was in Gola's body after Gola's death. He finally hatched, and now he wanted to control Blue Sword's body as he really liked Blue Sword's body, and he could use the sword energy in this body. God the Goblin explained to the audience what was happening. He said Gola's head had suddenly leaped up and taken control of Blue Sword's body. The scene felt chaotic. The great apostle began attacking the audience, but shield barriers protected everyone. Still, people started to panic as they saw the protective shield about to burst. Everyone was shocked to see the guy from the Sword Saint Guild turn into an apostle. Anna was shocked too when she saw Blue Sword become a Dark Guild apostle. A yellow-haired girl asked Sister Anna what they should do next. A man who was smoking also seemed really surprised by the unexpected turn of events. Le Ping was also taken aback. This wasn't what they had expected. He asked Elizabeth if they should intervene. Elizabeth replied, saying no. She explained that if Le Ping wanted to rule the world, he had to learn to adapt to such sudden changes. Otherwise, how could he manage such a big world in the future? Elizabeth told Le Ping to wait and see what happened. Le Ping agreed. Bose, who had been lost in thought, realized that both Elizabeth and Le Ping knew about the Apostles' invasion. They planned to see if Yi Leifu and he could handle the situation properly. He prayed that Yi Leifu would perform well and satisfy Le Ping and Elizabeth. Meanwhile, the president of the Sword Saint Guild was thinking that Bose seemed anxious. If he stepped in to save his daughter, it would prove that his guild wasn't strong enough to deal with the Dark Guild. Now the Sword Saint Guild was recruiting new people, and they wanted Bose to come back and become the new elder in the guild. The great apostle was really pleased with Blue Sword's body, saying it was excellent. Yi Leifu was truly surprised to see the Dark Guild. The great apostle laughed at Yi, asking what the little one wanted to do. Yi Leifu retrieved her treasure card, saying she didn't need to worry so much if the opponent was the Dark Guild. Yi Leifu's body started to glow, surrounded by a huge amount of magical energy. The great apostle got really scared seeing the unknown power coming from Yi, thinking it was better to murder her immediately. He used Blue Sword's energy to attack Yi. However, Yi Lefu managed to stop his attack. She used her card skill and created a sacred guardian to protect herself. Le Ping was really surprised when he saw and felt something familiar. Meanwhile, the Dwarf Guild president was shocked after seeing Yi Lefu's card power. He wondered how the new cards were different from the previous ones since they felt incredible. The man with the eyeglasses was also really shocked. He had never seen an attack like this before. He wondered if the phantom on the stage was one of the 13 holy warriors recorded in the books. The Sword Saint Guild president asked Bose if this was the trick he used to defeat the 6 pillar demons. Bose replied that he used a 9-card formation before, and his daughter was using only a 5-card formation. The attacks were the same but different in magical power. Bose hoped that it was enough to defeat the Dark Guild apostle. Yi Lefu threw her card toward the great apostle, asking him to leave Blue Sword's body. Unfortunately, the great apostle dodged A's attack without any problem. He got really scared after seeing the power of these cards. He was surprised by the card's power. He was really impressed with Elf's power, but he didn't want to lose his life, so he jumped into the air, telling Yi Lefu that she was incredible, and he would be back for revenge after familiarizing Blue Sword's body. Unfortunately, Yi Lefu used her card and summoned her shield guardian, commanding it to stop the great apostle. Then she threw the great apostle to another shield guardian, and the guardians played with the great apostle like volleyball. The great apostle was really confused, not knowing what was going on. He thought he was just born and couldn't die there, so he used his strongest move, Fierce Sword, to escape. Before he could attack Yi, she used her guardian and trapped the great apostle in a box. The great apostle was really confused after seeing this, so he tried to cut the box with his fierce sword. However, before he could use his skill, Yi Lefu used her holy array, commanding her guardian to crush the great apostle. After that, the box started getting smaller and smaller. The great apostle asked Yi Lefu to show some mercy, saying there was no need to do this and he didn't want to die. However, Yi Lefu didn't listen. She crushed the great apostle and turned him into a purple ring, saving Blue Sword in the process. After that, she sighed with relief. However, she was a little careless with this move. Luckily, she defeated the great apostle, who was more powerful than her. Meanwhile, Blue Sword didn't look good as Yi Lefu gave him a really good beating. Bose, after seeing this fight, thought Le Ping and Elizabeth should be satisfied with this now, right? Le Ping was really surprised after seeing that the masked girl was Yi Lefu and told Elizabeth. He asked Elizabeth if she still remembered them, the father and daughter who came to live with them a few months ago. However, Elizabeth did not look happy. She looked back at Bose, wondering why they revealed themselves. Bose got scared when he saw Elizabeth looking at him angrily. He immediately apologized, saying that he didn't disturb them so their viewing experience won't be ruined. When Le Ping heard a familiar voice, he looked back and saw Bose. Le Ping waved his hand saying that he had a lot of questions to ask. When Bose heard that Le Ping had many questions to ask him, he assumed it was about being dissatisfied with Yi Lefu's card skills. On the other hand, the Sword Guild's elder was very curious to know who Le Ping was, which even someone like Bose respected so much. After Yi Lefu had won the competition, Bose invited Elizabeth and Le Ping to a gathering. Bose asked them to take their seats. However, Le Ping felt confused, wondering why he was invited again. Elizabeth replied, suggesting it wasn't a bad idea to learn more about current affairs to prepare for future leadership. Le Ping agreed, but preferred they call it an experience without mentioning world domination. Elder Sword, the president of Sword Saint Guild, congratulated Bose for winning the competition. Bose responded, saying they could discuss such matters later and introduced the guests. As they began to introduce Elizabeth, she turned towards Bose with her eyes glowing red, which startled Bose and Yi Lefu. They realized they couldn't reveal Elizabeth's true identity as the Demon Queen. Elder Sword asked why they couldn't introduce her. Bose, afraid, didn't know what to say. Le Ping understood and suggested keeping her identity hidden. Elizabeth didn't mind and told Le Ping he could call her whatever to ease the tension. Le Ping introduced himself as being from a small southern nation, a minister named Le Ping. He introduced Elizabeth as their princess. However, the butler behind Elder Sword mentioned not knowing of any southern princess. Both supported Le Ping's story, saying he taught Le Ping card skills personally. Le Ping blushed and admitted he wasn't very skilled with cards, but Bose was. He also expressed interest in learning swordsmanship from Bose. The yellow-haired girl was surprised and commented on Li Ping's interest in swordsmanship after showcasing strong card skills. Blue Sword warned her to be careful since Elder Sword was present. Meanwhile, Yi Lefu nervously asked Li Ping if she performed well in the square battle and if her card skills were satisfactory. Li Ping didn't understand what she meant. Bose asked Li Ping if there were any shortcomings in Yi Lefu's performance and encouraged honesty. Li Ping, serious, said he had no comments but didn't expect them to use his cards like that. Bose quickly agreed, admitting he was self-centered and created the card guild without Li Ping's permission. Yi Lefu asked Li Ping for forgiveness and admitted that she might have let him down, but that was her limit. However, Li Ping told her not to apologize. He said if they kept going like this, more people would be able to join in, which he thought was great. After hearing this, Yi Lefu asked if Li Ping meant that most people were like them, regulars, so their card strategy was suitable for others to learn. Li Ping agreed, saying it was better for promoting the guild. However, he also mentioned that in this magical world, he envied them for their magic abilities. Suddenly, Tagore began inspecting Li Ping and Elizabeth, finding it increasingly amusing. He secretly used his demonic eye lens to check their magic power. However, he was really surprised when he saw that one of them was casually emitting powerful magic, while the other was completely suppressed and showed no magic power at all. Elizabeth realized he was using some kind of tool to examine them and became really angry. Mr. Tagore became scared, wondering if he had been discovered, though he thought it was impossible. He had used the demonic eye lens to observe them, but there was no magical reflection. He felt confused by the oppressive feeling engulfing him. Elizabeth approached Li Ping with a chilling declaration of wanting to end someone's life. Shock washed over Li Ping upon hearing her words. He inquired about her target, urging her to hold off on such discussions until later, not wanting to complicate things for Bose. Elizabeth's mood brightened considerably at the sight of Pudding, instantly quelling her anger. Elder Sword intervened, calling for an end to idle chatter and a return to the main topic. He revealed that he had invited several individuals to discuss forming an alliance to combat the Dark Guild. Butler Ash presented a bag containing dark gears collected from participants throughout the competition, totaling 30 pieces. Li Ping, unfamiliar with dark gears, expressed astonishment. Bose clarified that these gears embed themselves into anyone who accepts the Dark Guild's power, drawing parallels to the ones found in Hunted Apostles. The president of the Dwarf Guild also expressed surprise at the number of dark gears, pondering the extent of the Dark Guild's infiltration. However, a yellow-haired girl questioned whether Gola had undergone the Sword of Purification test and accepted its power. Anna, a red-haired girl, revealed another possibility. The Dark Guild might have found a way to evade purification. Mr. Tagore explained that only those with the lowest fusion degree could be detected through purification. In the other scenarios, they could conceal themselves effectively. In the first scenario, the host couldn't bear the fusion, resulting in a backlash and transformation into a dark apostle. In the second, the host could bear it but couldn't control it, leading to a transformation witnessed in the square earlier. Ultimately, the host became a vessel birthing a powerful apostle. In the third scenario, the host gained full control, harnessing the power of the Demon King, becoming a strong servant of the Dark Guild. That's it for today's recap. Give us a like and subscribe for more videos. See you next time.